The United States Marine Corps is a small military service, but it is unmatched as a force multiplier. Pound for pound, it packs the most punch. The same can be said of the Institute for Justice, which is the Marine Corps of intellectual combat. IJ, as it is known to its large and growing legion of admirers, is a merry band of libertarian litigators. It is easy to see why IJ is America's happiest group of lawyers. They get up each morning and go to work suing governments. The lucid head and strong beating heart of IJ is its founder and general counsel, William H. "Chip" Mellor. Under his leadership, IJ has ridden to the rescue of small businessmen and women whose economic liberties have been violated by governments that are in cahoots with rent-seeking interests using political power to protect them from competition. IJ does not believe in the so-called Constitution in exile. Rather, it believes in the Constitution as written. IJ is winning case after case by insisting that there is nothing in the Constitution's text or structure that justifies treating economic liberty as less than fundamental. Under Chip Mellor's leadership, IJ is weaving a tapestry of little legal victories that are adding up to a fabric of enormous importance. IJ is persuading courts to acknowledge that the Constitution's primary purpose is not to facilitate majority power, but to protect individuals' liberty from threats, including the threat of overbearing majorities, which is to say that under Chip Mellor's leadership, IJ has advanced the cause of protecting, to coin a phrase, the full range of Americans' privileges or immunities. Except, of course, I did not coin that phrase. It is in the Constitution. And Chip Mellor is tireless in trying to remind courts of that fact, which they lost sight of in the slaughterhouse cases in 1873. For his extraordinary success as an institution builder, for making IJ a potent defender of small clients and large principles, and for, in the process, proving that the phrase happy lawyer is not yet an oxymoron. For all these reasons, Chip Mellor is a recipient of a 2012 Bradley Prize.
The Institute for Justice represents people whose individual rights are being violated by government. Chip's voice can be seen in every decision striking down a law that impairs economic liberty.
Chip is very good working for people of often limited means and limited education to chop down those barriers so they could find a way to develop themselves to a better life.
He is pursuing the American dream on behalf of everyone, including a lot of immigrants and would-be entrepreneurs frustrated by this or that petty government agency or regulation in some obscure corner of the economy.
I was starting a small commuter van service which transports passengers, and I was perceived by the local metropolitan authority and the local politicians acting together as a competitor. And in our community, that was a bad thing to compete with government. And Chip saw that that was an injustice, and he reached out to me and decided that he was going to take my case, and he did.
Chip believes in taking risks, and he encourages us to find cases or projects that might be kind of crazy and might also really change the world.
There is no issue once he decides to pursue it that he will not pursue relentlessly.
Chip is tenacious, not only in the large scale of pursuing the Institute's agenda for these 20 years, but also on behalf of every client that he takes on. That's apparent in everything that he does. His commitment to his client and to his cause is unlimited.
Once we had a case in the appellate court, and he had gotten injured, actually had fractured his back, and he was not able to fly. to come to New York to represent us in the appellate court. With a broken back, he came by train against his doctor's advice and represented us. Just a remarkable guy.
Well, Chip's work on behalf of liberty has been outstanding, and there are few people who have a better claim to the Bradley Prize as a result.
He has changed the face of public interest law. He has changed the face of law and made it much more protective of individual liberty than it ever would have been.
Chip really is an extraordinary fellow in the way in which he can kind of craft and live a vision. And he's been able to do this now for at least 20 years at the Institute for Justice. And God willing, he'll do it for another 20 more.
We are pleased to present the 2012 Bradley Prize to Chip Mellor. I'm deeply honored to receive this prize tonight and to be among such distinguished past recipients and tonight's recipients as well. I would like to thank Bradley Foundation President Michael Grebe, the Bradley Foundation trustees, and the selection committee. I would also like to thank my wife, Allison. She's been an amazing partner in a quest for liberty for 30 years now, and our children, Mitch and Sarah. My colleagues at the Institute for Justice deserve special recognition and thanks as well. They are an extraordinarily talented group of individuals who routinely make the impossible look easy. It is a true joy to go to work every single day, see these group of people, and to try and change the world while having fun doing it. Now, tonight's ceremony offers a chance to appreciate all that the Bradley Foundation has done to defend the enduring principles and truths at the heart of the American experiment. We're all very grateful for all that they have done. I know certainly I am personally and on behalf of the Institute for Justice. It also offers a chance to reflect upon some ideas that have failed the test of time. Ideas and practices that seem appropriate in one circumstance can be entirely inappropriate in another. Take, for instance, mustaches. When I started practicing public interest law 30 years ago, I had a mustache. But it wasn't just an ordinary, everyday mustache. It was a handlebar mustache. And I thought it was a good idea. In fact, I thought it was pretty dashing. Until one day, my wife and my mother took me aside. And they said, "That mustache has got to go. No one will ever take you seriously if you look like a sheriff from a grade B Western." Well, they were right, of course, so I trimmed my mustache and set off on the journey that brought me here tonight. But, you know, the notion that what's appropriate in one circumstance can be entirely inappropriate in another is true about not just trivial matters like fashion, but about matters of profound consequence as well. Take, for example, something that General Meese touched upon a moment ago, judicial philosophy. Judges bring to their decisions a philosophy as to the role of the judiciary. This philosophy affects how they approach and ultimately decide cases. Since the New Deal, courts have been increasingly guided by a philosophy of the kind of activism that General Meese referred to, as well as an increasing willingness to defer to the legislative and executive branches. But despite paeans to democracy, government actions are not entitled to deference simply because they come from a political process involving elected representatives. To the contrary, our framers were intensely aware of the dangers of interest group politics. and the dangers of overreaching government. The very structure of the Constitution rejects blind deference to the other branches. The court's job is to check constitutionally forbidden political impulses, not ratify them under the banner of majoritarian democracy. This philosophy of deference has all too often led to the judiciary's abdication of its essential role in our system of checks and balances so carefully designed by the framers. What began with expedient Supreme Court decisions to legitimize the New Deal has now been institutionalized by both liberals and conservatives. Along the way, provisions of the Constitution intended to limit government power have been stripped of effect, and constitutional protections for individual rights have been severely eroded. Indeed, for such key provisions of the Constitution as the Commerce Clause, the Due Process Clause, the Takings Clause, the Contracts Clause, the General Welfare Clause, and the Privileges or Immunities Clause, to the extent there's debate today, it's whether these key provisions of the Constitution impose any limit at all on government power. The result is that our liberties are increasingly dependent upon the self-restraint of politicians and government officials. It's no coincidence that the need for constitutional limits on government power has never been more urgent than it is today. A philosophy of judging deemed appropriate 70 years ago brought us to this precipice. That philosophy was never a very good idea, but it is woefully unsuited and inappropriate for the challenges our nation faces today. We should have instead something that General Meese joined with us to write about in National Review: judicial engagement. Courts must fulfill their roles as enforcers of the Constitution. They must be the bulwarks of liberty envisioned by Madison. They must, as Hamilton wrote, limit Congress to the acts prescribed by the Constitution. When the legislative or executive branches exceed the limited and enumerated powers in the Constitution, the judiciary must strike those acts down. After 7 decades of escalating deference, judicial engagement will not be easy. There will be very hard questions, but we should welcome that challenge and promote that debate. And we must never lose sight of the stakes. People like Institute for Justice clients Hector Ricketts, Suzette Kelo, Doreen Flynn, and so many others seek the chance to live as free and responsible members of civil society. Theirs are the aspirations that can and should drive our nation's future. But until the judiciary engages, those aspirations will remain at the mercy of increasingly unaccountable government. I thank you all tonight, and I thank especially the Bradley Foundation for this honor.